This episode of Worktapes is sponsored by Duke Timeless Spirits. Duke Spirits is blending modern technology and old school technique by aging their bourbons and ryes in the finest French oak wine barrels from 1932. And listen, I have some firsthand experience drinking their whiskey. It's sweet on the nose and the palate, but there's no burn going down. The spice, the cherry notes, the subtle citrus tones lingers really nice. Duke Spirits offers high-end, well-crafted bourbons, ryes, and tequilas. My favorite being the Extra Añejo Tequila Founders Reserve. Go to dukespirits.com to learn more. And remember, kids, you gotta be 21 to drink alcohol. Never compromise. Drink responsibly. dukespirits.com. Welcome to Worktapes. This is a podcast where we tear apart songs. Why was the song written? What's it about? What's the context and emotion behind it? Where were you at the time? What were you going through? How did certain lines come to you? What's the inspiration? How long did it take to write? I'm Brandon Carswell, and I'm fascinated with songwriting and how songs are built from the ground up. It's easy to hear a full production song on the radio and dismiss its origin story. I want to hear the rough draft of a song, or the work tapes. I want to explore the very beginning of how songs that move us and make us move are born.
Like an old pair of Levi's you just can't throw away, or a broken in Braves cap, grease stain on the A, or a faded two-tone Chevrolet with a couple 100,000 miles in the driveway. Grandpa's John Deere still tearing up the fields. That old school zip code, you can still crank the reel. That pair of boots you've had since 11th grade can't be replaced. If it works, just keep it working. If it ain't broke, leave it alone. No sense in changing something if there ain't nothing wrong.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Worktapes. This is Brandon. I am sitting in Nashville at Soundstage on Music Row with Joe Nash. Hey, Joe.
Hey, Brandon. How you doing?
I'm good. We just wrote a song together, and I think we wrote a good one. And our mutual friends, Nick Autry, Nick has an episode on this podcast, not too far back from now. I don't remember which episode it is. But Nick and who else? Kent Coley introduced us, and Tobin. We have a lot of mutual friends, and so I'm glad that you were kind enough to come on the show.
Oh, I appreciate you having me.
You're a great writer, and so I always feel privileged because I get to hang out and talk to great songwriters of all kinds, and so it's super fun. And now we're just sitting in this like crazy studio that we have no business recording a podcast in.
Yeah, and it's always interesting what all these different buttons do, and thankfully I'm not the one responsible for touching any of them.
Yeah, that's Nick's job. So yeah, man. Why don't we start with? I don't know a whole lot about your background. We've hung out a couple times, and obviously we just wrote. So, how did you get started in music? Where did all that come from?
So, it's interesting, Brandon. I actually had a passion for music like a lot of other artists and writers. It started in church. Yep.
Me too. Same.
One of the greatest stories that I still tell to this day is my mom she was in charge of the youth group and, really involved in the church and stuff. And I was, always there with her. And as a young kid, I jumped up on the altar and was playing air guitar. And somebody actually snapped a photo of that.
Oh, nice.
Which my mom still has the Christmas ornament to this day
with that
of
picture,
me.
yeah.
And I'm sure my dad probably, gave me a really nice punishment or spanking for that. But I've always been drawn to it, from that point. And growing up, like everyone else, I involved in sports and, but it always came back to playing music, and so I actually started performing at the age of 12, and doing like everybody else, going through, the school choirs and the jazz bands and things like that. But what was so rewarding, or what I was always drawn to, was the writing aspect of it, of how to, not only take someone's song and learn to play it, to do it as a cover, but how do I get what I'm feeling, or what I want to say? Why does a certain chord evoke a certain feeling?
Yeah.
And then as part of that journey, just started writing my own songs.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. What kind of stuff early on was influencing you? Was it like more like Christian culture kind of music because you were based in church, or was it kind of everything?
So it's funny you say that, because I felt like I got the best of both worlds.
Uh-huh.
Mom listened top 40 pop radio, dad country. Yeah. And so whoever you were riding with in the car, you got that flavor of the day.
Yeah.
And but growing up in West Virginia, you have a lot of bluegrass, folk influence, and so a lot of the local performers that I admired and would go watch. And there was a coffee house, Sister's Coffee House, in Princeton, West Virginia, and they were very supportive of the local, songwriters and stuff. So I would go there as a kid, and I vividly remember there was a guy by the name of Clinton Collins, coal miner during the day, but songwriter, performed his own stuff. And me and his son actually went to school together, graduated high school together. So all those years, middle school up, I would, anytime his dad was playing, I would go.
Yeah.
And I was just drawn into
what was
whatever.
he doing? What kind of music was it?
So he was, we actually called it Appalachia folk.
Okay.
And
what a coal story, like coal miner by day.
Yes.
Appalachian folk by night.
Mm-hmm.
And that was all his own material? Like he was writing his own stuff? Or
yes, always. And that was very just encouraging and inspiring, some of the songs. And he was kind enough, to basically, I'd try to write a song and I would always come over to go, hang out with his son, Matt, and I'd end up, in Clinton's room talking to him and saying, hey, I wrote this song.
Right.
What do you think about it?
Was he honest with you, or was he kind of make you feel good, kind of give you a pat on the back, send you on your way?
I really respected him.
Yeah.
Because to me, he almost had the perfect touch.
Okay.
He would, and I picked up on it later on, if it was something that he would say, hey, let me help you write that. Then I knew it was like, oh man, I needed to work on this, you know. But he never looked at me and said, oh, that's horrible, you know. But
it's like few and far between that anybody's ideas are really horrible. I mean, sometimes that happens.
Yes.
We talked about that at lunch.
Yes, we did.
Some people are not gifted in this area of songwriting or whatever they do, but they're good at something. So, I mean, I have similar stories in that kind of mentors of mine early on would be like, hey, I like this part, but you could change the melody halfway through the first verse and totally change your dynamic.
Yeah, it changes your way of thinking.
Yeah, and that blew my mind. And I was like, oh, this is how you write.
Mm-hmm.
This is how you make it interesting now.
Yeah, and even learning a formula.
Right.
You know, when you just grab a guitar and go for it, you hear commercial songs on the radio and you don't really fully understand, hey, that's a verse, that's a chorus. You should probably get to your chorus a little bit faster, or really understanding most of all, what are you trying to say?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and I think a lot of writers early on don't go that far into thought, you know, especially when you started writing when you're 12 or 13. That's about when I started. And so a lot of my songs back then would have been 2 pages in a notebook, you know,
yes.
like
Totally.
My verse is 10 years long.
And every detail you could cram in.
Yeah, every detail. And, you know, you start to realize, like, why does my song not sound like so-and-so's on the radio?
Yes.
What's that about?
Yeah.
And then, like, fast forward into adulthood and, like, the professional aspect of it, you realize, like, some of these huge songs have, like, 15 writers on it. And you're just, and I that blows me away. That's a whole side conversation, but I don't know that I could be in a room with 14 other people and be like,
I don't think I could. There's no way. I think
wild.
3, 4 max.
Yeah. That's, so, okay. So you started writing early on. I got a lot of influence from church and kind of your local surroundings. And there was a time that you, lived in Nashville, right?
Correct.
So
yes.
what brought you to Nashville? What was the moment where you're like, okay, I'm leaving here and I'm going there, and this is why?
So, ironically, I met a pastor that had moved from Nashville to, you know, Princeton, West Virginia, and he was a friend of Clinton Collins, you know, one of my mentors young growing up, and he introduced us. And his name was Chris Vanover, and he actually started, you know, mentoring me as well. And I was always fascinated with Nashville. You know, it's Music City. And I mean, not to throw in a pun, but with your last name Nash, you get sort of, you know, intrigued and loving music. It sort of felt right. But I came on, Chris was doing a church plant, and he brought me on as a worship leader and started, you know, working me through on, you know, how to set up sets and stuff. And in that process, he said, hey, we really need to go to a worship conference, you know, and actually it was up here in Rivergate, in Hendersonville. And I went up there, and there was a guy by the name of Shay Watson, and Shay was teaching a songwriting class.
Okay.
And at that moment, it was like things started to click.
Yeah.
You know, Shay, amazing writer. Actually, you know, one of my duo partners during my time here in Nashville with Watson and Nash. But I was 19 at the time, and seeing Shay sort of, you know, give some of those formulas and give some of those things about commercial writing that really gave me a new perspective. And ironically, I just walked up to him at that conference, you know, and I said, hey, I want to be a better writer. Yeah. And he, you know, amazing guy. And he was like, okay. He was like, well, at some point you need to think about moving to Nashville. He was like, but in the meantime, you know, send me some songs. And he would work with me, you know, and critique them and, hey, try this, do this. And that was sort of the moment, you know, being 19 at the time, I would probably been maybe a sophomore in college. And I knew then, I was like, I got to figure out a way to get to Nashville.
Right. That's cool. So so you come to Nashville. What, was this like in the 90s?
So I moved to Nashville in 2005.
Okay, 2005. Okay.
Yep.
And so you come here, and what would have led you to start a group with him? So you came here like on a whim? Like you knew him, I guess. Did you know anyone else?
So funny enough, when Shay and I kept in touch, Shay was connected with an independent Christian label.
Yeah.
And, you know, getting ready to move to Nashville, I'm trying to find a roommate. I'm trying to find a job. I'm, you know, getting ready to graduate college, with a business degree, and I'm thinking maybe I should work on the business side, or how does Nashville work? What does that even look like working in the music business? You know, and just so happened I picked up the phone and I called the label that Shay had worked with and stuff, and I heard him talk about. And the president of that label actually picked up the phone, which that was the first person out of many that even answered a phone call. Imagine that, right?
Yeah.
After being here. And he invited me to, hey, why don't you just come? I have a little internship program. You can come out 2 days a week and get a crash course on sort of how everything works.
Mm-hmm.
And buddy, you talk about being excited.
Oh, I'm sure.
Oh, I just felt like I'd won the lottery,
Yeah.
So moving here and still keeping in touch with Shay during that whole process, and I was doing things as a solo artist and really just trying to find my place,
right?
And then fast forward after going through, the different solo runs, Shay and I would write together, and we had a couple other friends. And then finally, probably about 4 or 5 years being in Nashville, we decided to form Watson and Nash.
Okay.
And that was when, Shay wasn't really a huge country fan, at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But it just started to click, and
it's funny how Nashville kind of does that to you, because, I moved here under a similar experience. I mean, I'm from here, but I moved back here and, with the intent of starting a rock band. And then you're like, oh, I could write country, as if it was easy. And you start writing, and you're like, well, I could just get a pub deal. Like,
just walk down and get one.
I already write this complicated rock music. I can dish out some country songs and get paid for it. And but never having really any interest in writing country music before that. And then you realize how difficult it is, first of all, to write a good country song, and not to mention how much competition there is for that. And
100%.
that you can't just walk in the door usually and get some kind of deal that's going to pay you your salary to write, however many songs a year. And but that still sticks with you, and you start to earn, you start to develop a respect for Nashville and the country scene, and you start to love parts of it or whatever. Like, I never grew up liking most country music.
Really?
I would have grown up, like, my parents were in Southern gospel, so I kind of had like some kind of roots there. But like country radio was never my bag whatsoever. But after being here, like, I'm just making the point that Nashville kind of grows on you when you're here. And how many people I know that came from a whole different world of music that now are professional country writers. And that's their
crazy
life.
How that works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they become more country, like, personally speaking, like they're like
changing clothes. All of a sudden they got a pair of cowboy boots. And you're like, wait, you never wore cowboy
camo,
boots.
like all the kind of like cowboy hats. They're driving big trucks. And it's like, well, okay, it's fine. You write a better song that way, I guess.
Yes.
That's really cool. So Watson and Nash was a country duo?
Country duo.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was it like, though? What kind of country?
So we, that was right about the time when we came together where Brooks and Dunn were, looking to retire. And then, Montgomery Gentry, they were sort of in that country duo space.
Right.
And I mean, and it wasn't really like we were aiming to do that just to aim in the marketing piece of it. It was more of like, hey, we enjoyed singing together and we both like to sing. So we almost set it up to where an Everly Brothers type sound where we would both sing the whole time, and I guess it's somewhat like that time period too. Big and Rich was, doing their thing.
Right.
But ours had a little more of an acoustic feel to it, and our goal was always just, write what we wanted to write and then try to make the vocal harmonies to where the voices together created its own unique sound,
right?
As opposed to two separate artists switching off leads and things like that.
Yeah.
And sometimes it called for that, but the main focus was how can we create a sound when two voices come together?
Interesting. Yeah. That's what, around the same time I had a duo with my brother, and that's about what we did.
Yeah.
Same thing. I didn't know that that's what you guys are doing. That's really cool. And how long were you here doing that?
So with Watson and Nash, actually, Shay and I worked together for about 3.5, 4 years. Obviously that whole span of being in Nashville, 10 years we wrote, during that time. But with the group, we had, about a 3.5, 4 year run where.
And did y'all make like a full record?
We did. Yeah. We made a full record called Mile Markers. And hopefully.
Is it out still? Is it like available?
Actually, it got pulled when we disbanded a long time ago, but hopefully looking forward to within the next 6 months of actually re-releasing that. Me and him actually been in conversation of just, hey, let's go ahead and maybe throw this out. We've already got it recorded. We own the masters. And
so it didn't get pulled because you guys were at odds. It was like a label thing?
Well, basically everything was set up to where we had management at the time, and how sometimes sunset clauses work and all that fun stuff. So him and I personally made the decision that once we fully separated and went our own ways, he started, pursuing a professional career. I took a stint where jumped in that myself. It was like, it was to our best interest to just pull it off all the platforms, but that was back in the time frame where there were actual physical CDs.
Sure.
So we still had, maybe 50 or 60 of those left laying around out of, thousands we printed. But yeah, now with the digital platform, really hope that we can, release that.
That's cool.
That comes
I'm
back.
in the middle of trying to re-release a bunch of my old stuff from same thing, the duo thing that I did with my brother.
Oh, you absolutely should.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody on a previous episode this week about the same thing. Like, just because right before streaming hit and everything was mechanical still, you had CDs, and that stuff didn't get put online.
Ah, okay.
And so I kind of wonder like how many artists out there still have all these CDs floating around, like boxes of CDs in their closet, and then they disbanded around the time where streaming started getting introduced, and none of that music is out there anymore.
No, it's just sitting. And I mean, that was such an instrumental part of my life and some of the great memories and stories. And I mean, going back to, like I spoke about earlier, meeting, Shay when I was 19 years old and being able to fast forward and have an album. And, now fast forward another 10 years, it's like, those are some great memories,
right?
And great songs,
So you had the band and you did that, and then that was over, and you kept going? You just kept writing or stayed in the industry, or did that experience kind of burn you out in Nashville and you wanted to pack up and get out of here?
Oh, this is the fun part. This is the part of the story that everybody loves. So my dream was always to go to Belmont, even, as an undergrad. It didn't work out. But, after the music business run, I just really needed a break. You know how it is. You've been grinding on the road, and, you have all these emotional ups and downs and opportunities. And so my wife and I were talking, and I said, I think I'm going to go back to school. And she said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I have a business management degree, but I don't really know if an MBA is a fit. And just crazy enough, I decided I'm going to go to school and be an accountant. I'm going to get my CPA license. And as you know, a lot of your creative friends and your artist friends give you a very hard time for that.
Course,
Like, wow, going from...
What are you doing trying to go make money?
Yeah. And
Instead
you're
of
going to sit
writing
behind a desk, But with that said, Belmont offered an amazing fast track to get the credits you needed in a summer to go and get your master's in accounting, which, you know how that works is you have to have a certain number of credits before you can even sit for the CPA. And I think mentally, this is part of the story where a lot of people ask me why I did that. When it comes to working in the music industry, there's so many things that are out of your control. Somebody could have a bad day, you lose a record deal.
Yeah.
Someone could say, hey, I've had songs on hold. I literally had one song on hold. It was cut. The next day, the label closes.
Yeah.
And those things are out of your control, and being in the business, as you know, you just get used to it.
Yeah. And for those listening that don't, what does it mean to have a song on hold?
So basically that means an artist has committed to recording it.
Right.
And usually it goes to that phase of like, okay, we're going to put it on hold. So we don't want you to pitch it to anybody else. Our artist is interested in it and they like it. So we're getting ready to go in the studio and do a record. We just want to make sure that you've got this song allocated for our artist. And a lot of times it's, word of mouth, or you might get an email. It's not a formal contract.
Yeah, and it can be on hold for a long time.
A very long time.
And you're just sitting around wishing they would get it done.
Wishing, yes. With your fingers crossed and your prayers hoping that, are they really going to cut this? Are they really going to cut this?
Yeah.
And I always say it's not cut until it's cut.
It's not cut until it's cut. So you went to become a CPA, or at least learn how to become a CPA?
I did, and actually I have my CPA license.
Yeah.
So going to Belmont, I graduated from there, did a 2 years master's, and I really think that part was knowing that I always heard the CPA exam was the hardest thing you could ever do. And I really feel that coming off of, taking some of the bumps and, bruises along the way of being in the business and just wanting to control it yourself, it was a personal challenge of like, okay, if a CPA exam's the hardest thing, I need to do that.
Yeah.
Almost do it for myself.
Right.
Of like, show that like, I'm a hard worker. I'm not going to quit, And that was probably just some personal struggles I dealt with myself, of coming out of, feeling like music doesn't always turn out the way everyone anticipates it to, you know? So yeah, I am a licensed CPA in the state of Tennessee.
Nice. And a songwriter. That's great. I mean, I think there's really wise advice in that for younger, kind of anybody in the industry is like, I guess there becomes a point if your living is music and you're at a certain point, you can safely put your eggs in that basket because you're getting mailbox money or whatever. But it's pretty smart to have a backup plan if you're going to come here and quote unquote try to make it.
I 100% agree with that. And I think there comes a point too where I've always been an advocate of surrounding myself with people that I feel are honest and you can trust. And, ultimately it's your decision what you want to do, when you want to do it. Right. But I mean, that was very hard for me, deciding to take a different path.
Yeah, because you would have had to put a lot of energy into this new thing that you could have been writing songs.
Right.
You could have been networking and doing that whole thing. But, and there's also something to say, like, if you really want to be a writer and be around the business, I think it's pretty smart to come here and do that.
Absolutely.
And just be here. You don't even have to be doing it, but you will meet people in the industry if you go out to eat in the right part of town.
They're everywhere.
You'll meet somebody. And so you can You can go learn a trade, or you can go become an accountant, or you could go do whatever. You're going to meet people, and who knows what will happen from it. And also, there's just no guarantees. You could write a number one song that hits tomorrow, and there's still no guarantee that that's going to be some lifelong paycheck for you.
100%.
Especially nowadays.
It's a different ball game.
It's a different ball game.
Completely. Yeah.
Man, that's cool. Thanks for sharing all that. And I think that that's a really smart move. Do you feel like, was there anything about that experience that you regretted?
I guess the only moments really coming from a family with a mom and dad that, you know, we were lower middle class, and the one rule of the house was you didn't quit.
Yeah.
You signed up for whatever sport you wanted to play, and no matter what, you had to finish the season. That didn't mean if you didn't want to play next year, you had to play, but whatever season you signed up for, you had to finish it.
Yeah.
No matter what. Like, you had to finish it. And that was always my mom and dad's rule. You know, so I struggled with that. You know, I think subconsciously, you know, all the things you learn as a kid and how you're raised, I mean, that affects you in ways you really don't understand. And then you get older. And I think that stint, you know, my earlier stint in the music run, it was tough because sometimes you felt like you did quit.
Yeah.
Even though it was, looking back now, I always say God's got a sense of humor.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, best thing that ever happened to me by far.
Right. Well, that's great. Let's talk about this song that you wrote. Is it called You Got a Good One?
When You Got a Good One.
When You Got a Good One.
Yeah.
You got a good one.
You got a good one.
This is a cool song. I like the concept of this song. You wrote this with Nick Autry.
I did. Nick Autry and Clint Johnson.
Okay.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned before, Nick has been on here. Nick and Joe and I just wrote a tune today.
Amazing time.
It was a great time. And Nick's a great writer. You're a great writer. Maybe you decided to cut this song. Who brought this idea to the table, though?
So this is really cool. Actually, this was Nick's idea.
Okay.
And, you know, and going through the stint of easing back into the business, you know, I always say, you know, like I said earlier about people in your life, I've kept in touch with a good friend, Kent Coley, for at least 20 years, you know, and back to earlier when I talked about the independent music label that I came on and did the internship, that's where I met Kent.
Okay.
And so through all of that, you know, Kent and I kept in touch even, you know, after I come out of the business. And I was like, you know, I really think I'm going to get back. I'm missing it, you know, I'm really missing it. And so long story short, met a friend, Eric Hurt, and Eric introduced me to Nick, and then Eric dropped us in the room together, you know, and we come in and we're writing for, Clint is, you know, the artist Rashad. We're writing for him that day, and, you know, and so, as you know, the process is what does the artist need, and, you know, how can we help you? And, you know, that day, you know, Rashad had some ideas, and, you know, we were tossing around, and Nick's like, hold on a second. I've got something on my phone. And he picks it up. And he's like, yeah, what do you guys think about When You Got a Good One? And I was hoping, you know, Rashad loved it, because I'm thinking in the back of my mind, this song's going to be awesome. You know, it's going to be an easy write, and you can drop in all those country elements and all those things. And, you know, it is now, things move so fast, and we live in a world where it's like, you want the next best thing. You want the next best thing, but there's always something you hold on to. You know, there's always that, you know, not to be cliche, but that pair of jeans or that boots, or, you know, there's some item that when you got a good one, you want to keep it, you know? And so when Nick had that idea, deep down inside, I was like, oh gosh, this would be such a fun song to be able to release. Yeah,
it is fun. Let's take a second and listen to the work tape, because the work tape is cool. because Nick is singing this one.
Nick is.
So a lot of times on this show, the work tape is who is the artist that I'm interviewing, is the one that's singing it. But you're not singing this one. But you did end up cutting it, which is very cool.
Yeah.
So we'll take a second, listen to that work tape, and then we'll kind of unpack what the song is about.
Like an old pair of Levi's that you just can't throw away, or a broken in Braves hat with a grease stain on the A, or a faded two-tone Chevrolet with a couple 100,000 miles in the driveway. Grandpa's John Deere that's still tearing up the field, that old school Zebco, you can still crank the reel. That pair of boots you've had since 11th grade can't be replaced. If it works, just keep it working. If it ain't broke, leave it alone. No sense in changing something if there ain't nothing wrong. To trade it is a waste of time. You couldn't even if you tried. No need in looking, why would you, when you got a good one? If she gets a little crazy after having a little wine, and up and out the door on Sunday and in the church on time, she sits with you while you're fishing and helps you bait the line. She's a keeper, so keep her by your side. If it works, just keep it working. If it ain't broke, leave it alone. No sense in changing something if there ain't nothing wrong. To trade it is a waste of time. You couldn't even if you tried. No need in looking, why would you, when you got a good one? If you have it, hold on to it. If there's love there, don't lose it. You may never get a chance to get it back. If it works, just keep it working. If it ain't broke, leave it alone. No sense in changing something if there ain't nothing wrong. To trade it is a waste of time. You couldn't even if you tried. No need in looking, why would you, when you got a good one?
I love this demo. It's great. It's cool to hear Nick sing it after listening to the full production version, which as of right now, you haven't released it yet, right?
I haven't. It'll be dropping August 30th.
August 30th. So, yeah, by the time this airs, by the time this episode releases,
it should be
out.
Yeah.
Because I have a few more in front of this one, but yeah. So you kind of mentioned like kind of Nick brought the idea and you guys sat down and wrote it, but when you're contributing to a song, what is your angle? I kind of learned a little bit about that today writing with you.
Yes.
But I want you to talk about it. You already told me this, but I want you to say, like, when you're in a room with two other writers, are you the guy that's like gunning for, hey, listen to this idea I just had, or what are you doing?
My strategy coming in any writing session is always to come with at least 2 or 3 ideas.
Yeah.
But my favorite thing to do is read the room, and if someone immediately has an idea, you can usually pick up on, oh yeah, and then you can see if what the other writer, if they think about it. And I'm a firm believer of in the moment, because to me, some of the best things come out that you don't anticipate or don't expect.
Right.
And you don't want to crush, you don't want to crush that moment, and just follow it. And so I always consider myself the utility guy. I will, if it gets quiet, then it's like I usually have some ideas in the back of my head, or if I'm hearing something ultimately where I'm like, man, I really hope we write a bridge.
Yeah.
Or I think it needs it. I always try to fill in the gaps, needless to say, and that's always been, my strategy. I've learned that being adaptable, it makes for a better time. And, number one, people welcome you to write, nobody wants, somebody that's always crushing, ideas. That's no fun for anybody,
right.
And so that's sort of my process. Always be prepared, have some ideas in case nobody has any ideas, and then just fill in those gaps. And I mean,
well, you kind of ninja'd it today. It was
Thank
well, you would bring in some ideas, and then like right at the end, we were like, oh, I think it's fine without a bridge. And then all of a sudden, Joe just like whips out 2 or 3 lines, and me and Nick are like, yeah, where the heck have you been?
Well, I mean,
not that you weren't adding things all along, but this was like a ninja move. It was like the drop kick to the chest.
That wasn't intentional. I just felt,
and it
felt good.
Yeah. The song needed it. It kind of brought it home.
Well, thank you. I couldn't have done it without, the great ideas that you guys were running through the whole time.
Well, maybe one of us will cut it and we'll talk about it someday on this show. But for this particular song, when you got a good one, what I want to know is, so Nick brought the idea in, but did he already have it kind of framed out? Like, we're going to talk about when you have a good pair of jeans and a good pair of boots, and then it pivots over to having a good woman, because obviously this is the trajectory.
It's country. It's got to come back to the girl.
Yeah. So whose idea was that?
Honestly, all of us. Yeah. Really. It was a cool moment where it was such an easy title, because I felt like everybody can relate to that.
You already knew what it was going to be about.
You already, and everybody. It was such an easy thing. Rashad Clint, he likes to fish. Nick likes to fish. And so that's why, you're going to hear something about fishing, know, and everybody's got a relationship with a truck and, those main things. And what was, really cool about it is all of us are Atlanta Braves fans, so some of those, memorabilia, hat, things like that. It was easy to sit down, and we sort of mapped it out right there on the fly, and then, you know how it is. After you got the idea and know what you're going to say, the song sort of writes itself, for the most part.
It can. And I think that's really smart advice also, because the way that I kind of look at this podcast is that I assume that there's someone, at least one person out there probably listening or will, who's kind of up and coming writers trying to learn how to do it.
100%, yes.
Or hasn't had a lot of experience co-writing, or they aren't really sure themselves. They're like, how does all this work? Like, what if I go in there and have a dumb idea? And I mean, the answer to that question is you will.
Everybody does.
And you should.
Yes.
You should have more dumb ideas than you have right ideas.
Write the bad ones to get to the good ones.
That's right. Yeah. And don't be ashamed of it, because that's how you get to it. You prep the song and you go, well, what about this line? Well, I know this is dumb, but it captures an idea. And then someone else in the room will go, yeah, well, if you say it like this, then it works. And you're like, oh, duh, I should have thought of that, but he did. So this is why we co-write.
You're exactly right.
Right? So, and then the other point that you mentioned, which I think is really important, is when you do co-write, you always come with an idea. Or
it is
3.
Crucial.
And we were talking at lunch about this, about one of us was telling a story about someone, a co-write they had, where the other writer didn't have any ideas, didn't bring anything.
It makes it
and
very
you're sitting
challenging.
there for half an hour going, well, this session's for you. This is for you. Like, he's the artist. Like, what do you want to do? Well, I don't know.
And I think maybe that's a maturity thing, but that is so important, because that's the easiest way to not get invited back to a room.
Right.
And then you can, advance your songwriting knowledge and go from being a beginner writer to, an intermediate writer immediately, if you just simply bring in ideas.
Yeah.
Because that shows you care. That's the way I always looked at it. This is somebody's time, your time, my time, Nick's time, you know. So I feel like it's almost a respect thing to, hey, I care about doing this enough. I'm getting this opportunity and, you know, grateful for the opportunity to have some of your time. So let me at least bring something, you know, or have something in my back pocket.
Yes.
You know, to show that I appreciate your time.
Yes. And to piggyback off of what I was just saying about once you do bring an idea, this could be an idea that is just like a couple of lines. It could be the chord structure. It could be a full song.
Yes.
But what you have to do is be willing to let the other writers in the room punch holes in your full song or chord progression.
Yes.
And say, hey, this is a good idea. We can run with this, but we're going to this is what happened today with us, is we're going to like change this stuff and make it more appealing or more commercial or more whatever. We're going to make this more palatable for the listener to understand the story. And that means we might need to change the story and make some pivots. And you need to be comfortable enough as a writer to say, okay, let's do that.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, dude, today was perfect.
It's hard. It's hard for an artist sometimes, especially an amateur artist, to get to a point where they go, yes, here's my heart. Please destroy.
Please. Yep.
And rebuild it.
I don't want to be vulnerable, but
right.
Yeah, that's so important.
Yeah. But you look at a song as almost like a tool. Like, this is something that you're creating together. And just because I've made something, don't be so stuck on it until you're done.
Yeah.
It's recorded or cut by somebody. And even then, like, I've listened to interviews by Bono where if you watch them live in their later years, like even Joshua Tree songs, he's changing lyrics on the fly all the time because he's never satisfied with his original right. Which I always think is really interesting, because I tend to think that about a lot of my songs, where I could be like, oh, I should have changed this line, but now I've recorded it. I can never change it. Well, that's not true.
That's not true at all.
Yeah.
And on the flip side of that, I feel, that the moment of having those other people input, number one, I trust them.
Right.
That's a cool thing of being
if you know
around
them, but you don't always know them in a co-write. Sometimes you get set up like a blind date.
Yep, that's definitely a different story. But there have been moments where, in the span of writing, where you walk away and you're thinking, oh man, I wish I would have spoke up. I might have should have changed that line. Yeah. And I guess as an artist, if I'm Bono, I can change whatever line I want.
Sure. Okay, so you guys wrote this song. You finished it. When you finished it, what was the vibe in the room? And did you have an idea that you were going to try to pitch this to someone else? Or did you already know, like, oh dude, I'm cutting this song, this is mine?
In the back of my head, I love the song. I've always been a fan of it. And it was actually, wrote 2 years ago. Okay. And so, with Rashad being an artist, immediately he was going to demo it, put his vocal on it, do a work tape. Sure. Like the one you heard earlier. And, and that production was aimed a little bit more, in line with what Rashad would do or potentially do. And, as time evolved and things happened, the song hadn't really moved that much, and he hadn't really had a chance to work with it that much. And then I played it out, sometimes Nick would play it out, and I got an amazing response. Yeah. And my wife loved it. And usually she is very brutally honest about
hates
songs.
Your songs. Is that what you're...
There's a lot of songs that she has said, I don't think I would have done that. Or she
wives are good about
might
that.
not even come right out and say it, but just like if she says nothing, that usually means, because you'll play it and, lean in and look.
Yeah. Good job, honey.
Is she?
I guess.
Yeah. And so we were driving in the truck, and actually I ended up taking Nick's, what you heard on the work tape, that was Nick's vocal from that day.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay.
So Nick cut a scratch, and I asked him, I said, and this is how I knew, like, man, I'm really digging this song. I said, hey, can I get that session? And he said, yeah, sure. Why? I'll do the demo on it. I said, well, yeah, that's fine. But, I like playing with, mixing and all that stuff. I enjoy doing that. And I said, I'll just have it just in case. And so over time, I started working on a demo, and I started, I'd put a little bit here, there, and I just had, Nick's vocal, and I said, well, let me just drop a demo on it, and put it together. And, man, after a while, I was like, I'm really digging this song. And I was listening to it in the truck. My wife, she said, this is a good one. No pun intended. Yeah. And graciously, Rashad, he said, I would love for you to cut it. And he said, absolutely. He said, cool. And man, it was a very exciting moment for me, being connected to it for a couple of years and being in that moment of writing it. And, so yeah, that was really cool.
It turned out great. Did you do all the production yourself, or did you bring it in with Nick?
So the final version that you will hear that get released, Nick and I did a session here at Soundstage.
Okay.
And so that was cut in July, of this year. Yeah. But the demo I'd lived with for a long time, and but yeah, I mean, I just be honest, man, it was a dream to see it go from an idea to see it get wrote, to sit on it for a couple years, to have the opportunity to play it out at songwriters events and get the response, to now fast forward and have the opportunity to cut it here with, Nashville's finest, studio musicians still amaze me to this day, but, and had a great friend of mine that, mix engineer, Brent Hendricks, who I met my second week in Nashville, when I moved here in 2005. Fast forward, he mixed it.
Cool.
And so I think that's the most amazing thing about my music journey. Number one, all the cool people I meet, all the friends and all the connections, and then being able to work with those people on a creative, and let them do what they do.
That just speaks to your grateful artistry, though, that you can kind of go full circle, and just because you connect with friends in the sound doesn't mean you're good. And, true. So to go full circle, and for your pals to be like, hey, yeah, pull me in. I want to work with you on this. That means, they like what you're doing.
Well, it definitely meant a lot to me personally.
Yeah. So, what are your next moves, Joe Nash?
So my next moves, once the single's released, I've refocused on, it's been such a fun journey, coming back and being able to even release stuff, and there for the longest time, I didn't want to do it. But you know how it is, it's just the opportunity now and the accessibility to release stuff. And especially something that you connect with, what's the worst that could happen?
Oh, yeah. We should be.
Why not?
As writers, we should be releasing as much as we can.
There's no reason not to.
There's no reason not. It's easy. It's hard to make songs and produce them. It's easy to release them. Once they're done, just throw them out, man. Just get it out there.
Yes. And that's been my approach, and obviously, as you know, I'm a people person. I love, great hang and being able to release something and then have an excuse to come to Nashville to write and, go play shows. And
yeah, because you live in Florida right now. I don't think we mentioned that, but you're not in Nashville, residing here at least.
Correct. I'm now in Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay. You might as well be here, though.
It's an easy Southwest flight. I think the pilot said last night, 1 hour and 7 minutes.
There you go.
Sometimes it takes me longer to get to.
Yeah. What is your current, what I want to ask is this is be like an old school question. What's in your CD player right now? Like what's on deck? What are you listening to right now? What's on deck for you?
Stephen Wilson Jr.
Okay.
Yes.
What a record.
Oh, buddy. That record, I mean, full transparency, one of my favorite writers, Jeffrey Steele.
Yeah.
And some of the songs that he wrote on that one, Grief Is Only Love, Patches. And then the day I heard Father Son.
Oh, man. Yeah. That song is, yeah, everyone should just go listen to it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And then ironically, you know, I have to give a big shout out to Eric Hurt, who, you know, if I didn't mention it earlier, he set up the session for me and Nick and, you know, Rashad to write When You Got a Good One.
Yeah.
And then knowing that one of his close friends and one of his writers, Nick Wayne, you know, wrote Father Son on that record.
Right.
I was just in awe, really, because, you know, I remember seeing Nick over at Bobby's Idol Hour, and I said, man, I got to shake your hand, because that song, you know, I almost had to pull over the truck.
Yeah. I can't imagine being in the room to write a song like that. There's maybe one time in my life where I've written a song that I wrote alone that I couldn't get through the recording session without some tears and having to retake it a few times before I had to just be like, okay, this is business now. I can't make a good vocal track if I'm crying about this song. But yeah, man, how some of those songs get executed in the moment just must be like a whole therapy session.
I fully agree. You know, I think that's the, you know, like I talked earlier, learning why certain chords make you feel a certain way. Yeah. You know, like we were writing today in that song where I was like, this got a positive message. Right. But it's got a minor feel to it. Yeah. I love that, you know, because immediately, you know, as a writer, as you know, the ultimate goal is you want to write something that someone connects with. Sure. Yeah. And the more powerful that emotion is, that, I mean, and the impact that a song has, I feel like that's some of the most rewarding things ever, you know, as a writer. You know? Yeah, I agree. 100%. Thank you for doing this episode. Oh, no, man. Thank you. And talking about the song. Go ahead and tell people where they can find you and exactly when this song comes out, even though it'll probably be out by the time this comes out, but just give us the lowdown real quick. So easiest way to find me, obviously, everybody has Instagram, you know, Joe Nash Music. I have joenashmusic.com, and as all the other songs, all the, you know, major platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, you know, when the song drops August 30th. Okay. You know, you can find it anywhere. You're playing out at all? Yes. Actually, I've landed a really cool spot in St. Augustine, Florida, about 35 minutes south, Pierre's Pub, cool. Which, you know, a local bar owner that I think he loves music more than a lot of musicians that I know. And I think we need to make a guys trip out there. Hey, we will set that up. Nick, we can make that happen. We can all go out. Actually, Nick's played there with me before. Yeah. Let's go down. We'll do a run. We'll just play songs and have a good time. And now we got one that all three of us have wrote on. There you go. That we could play. We can do it. If we can ever get through it. I couldn't get through it. I got to learn it. That's all right. Man, yeah. Thanks so much. Contrary to popular opinion, your name is really Joe Nash. Yes. We're clearing that up for the other people in this room. Your name is Joe Nash. That is great. I want to thank Nick Autry for letting us set up at Soundstage, and thanks Soundstage. Thanks Kent Coley, who's taking videos right now over there. And thank you, Joe. Oh, no, Brandon, I appreciate it. It's an honor to be here, man. We'll keep hanging out minus microphones. And hopefully we get to write some more tunes together. Oh, man. We're going to do it. That was a great time today. Appreciate it so much. Cool, man. We're done. When you got a good one,
when you got a good one.
When we're gone, what will be left behind? Beside trust funds or coin collections, we live on through our stories, the legends and legacies that tell of our greatest successes, our wildest ideas, our biggest failures. And what better vehicle for a story than music? Our musical heritage holds many truths about our humanity, and perhaps even more mysteries.
I mean, my whole thing here is basically a theory. There's nothing here that I can prove or disprove.
Join me in my quest for answers as I explore untold stories.
You know, breathe a little bit of life back in a Dial song. That's my contribution to the band.
Go on unforeseen adventures.
We are getting in Unit 92.
My son Walker, this one's for you.
This is Will's handwriting.
Dive deep into conversations with some household names.
Hey, this is Amy Grant.
Hey everybody, it's Vince Gill.
Hello, this is Ben Folds.
And peer into dusty corners of the internet.
I am in full belief that Pink Floyd intentionally wrote their album, Dark Side of the Moon, to line up with The Wizard of Oz.
Hear from those whose hearts define what it means to be human.
That music, it don't discriminate. It's one of the things I know that bring people together.
If you put a smile on a kid's face, then you've done a day's work.
And those who knew the stakes of their calling.
My first thought was, oh, this is 50 grand. This is worth 50 grand.
And they heard me sing, and they said, well, wait a minute, we're getting ready to do this Scooby-Doo thing, get him.
Join the journey as I see how far my questions can get me. What is the power that music holds to do this kind of thing?
It's like a scientist is like, I don't really know why this works all the time, but every time I do it, it works.
But when we search for answers, we rarely find the ones we expect. And sometimes we realize that we don't need an answer at all. From Wise Company Productions, I'm Jonas Litton, and this is Stories and Sounds.
Stories and sounds. Oh, everywhere you turn, there's a dream in a making. Any step you take, there's a history waiting. Sing, where are you now? Oh, 'cause we're ready for your stories and sounds.
Available wherever you listen to your favorite sounds.